Guys.
Morning.
All right. Well, first of all, thank everybody for being here today. Um, it's a good day, and every time I get to be up here, I don't always think about it this way, but really, it's an honor and a privilege that I get to do what I do, and it's honor and a privilege that I get to have that we have the church family that we do. I said that a little bit in Bible class, but man, it's just I really, really love Sugar Grove. Y'all are awesome people. It's an awesome church family. I'm really glad to be here. So thank you guys for, well, most of you guys, thank y'all for who you are. You're good. Most of y'all are some pretty fine people. All right. So today we're going to do a kind of a different style of lesson. It's going to sound kind of weird, but hopefully it'll make sense once we get going into it. Okay. So here's the title for today's lessons: 3 statements Jesus would like to be wrong about. The other way, every time. I do it every time. All right. 3 statements Jesus would like to be wrong about. Okay, so y'all probably heard this quote, and I brought it up several months ago. But you know the quote that's like, "Hard times create strong men." You know that one? And strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And then it starts over the cycle. And then those hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times, and good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And then what happens? It starts over, and hard times create strong men. Okay. So at the end of the day, what is the point? I don't know who came up with this. This is a good quote. But what is the point of that quote? Why does somebody write that quote down? Why does that kind of pick up some momentum and it becomes pretty popular and a lot of people believe in that quote? Like the goal of the quote, listen to it one more time. The goal of somebody saying, hard times create strong men creates good times creates weak men, and weak men create hard times. The goal of that quote is so that people would learn from the past, right? The goal of the quote is, if you become like weak men, and if you get comfortable with the good times, what's going to happen? You're going to lose it, right? And it's going to turn into what? Hard times. So to keep the goal of the quote is to break the cycle. We don't want it to be hard times again, right? It'd be great if it could be, hard times create strong men create good times, and good times, instead of creating weak men, if you're living in a good time, if you're living in a comfortable era, remember how hard it was to get here, and let's just go ahead and make ourselves strong people so we don't have to go back into that cycle again. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? You don't have to, but do you agree that the goal of this quote is not to say this is how it is and you can't change it, but the goal is the quote would cause people to change? Would y'all agree with that? Okay, I got one more for you. It's not a quote, but when I was when I first started out in EMS, I don't know if y'all remember, but Jim really hooked me up. He really got me into school, and I mean, I still had to pay for it and stuff, but he helped me. I was late getting started, and he got me into a program in Owensboro. It was great. All right, so when I get out of the program, I go start working at the EMS in Bowling Green, and I'll never forget the guy that was training me. He's been doing it for like, let's say 20 years or something. And I'm sitting here looking at this pay scale. Y'all know what I'm saying? All right. So I'm like, man, this is okay. I'm making X number of dollars right now. And every year you get a certain amount of pay raise. And then there's a point at which you cap out your top out pay, right? And so I'm doing the math here, and I'm like, all right, so this is how much money I'm making now. And you got to take out health insurance for 6 folks in this family, all right, the small tribe that we were raising. And then you got to take out, your taxes and everything else. Like, man, that's not a whole lot, mate. But maybe if I stick around, how good is it going to get? And then you realize, when I am, 30 years from now, I will still be making the same amount of money because it's gonna top out. Do you understand? All right. Now, if you're single, it's good money. Or if you got a 2-income household, it's good money. All right. But I'm like, man, I just don't know that I can do it. So I'm talking to the guy that's training me, and I'm like, like What else? What are my other options here? You know? And you know what he tells me? Now listen. He's like, now you're not going to do this. What needs to happen is somebody like you needs to go in there to the director's office. And you need to tell the big guy that's in charge, like, we need to make more money. Now, when he told me that, he was right. I did not go into the director's office and I didn't kick down the door and demand more money. Okay, I didn't. Um, but why did he phrase it in that way? Why would somebody say, well, what you need to do, but you're not going to do it? Why does somebody say that? They say it in that way because you know what they want to happen? They want you to actually do it. Like, I bet you won't do it. You ever fallen for that? I bet you won't do it. Now, why didn't he do it himself? Well, because he's been there too long, you know, and he's worked his way up the ladder and he doesn't want to risk ruining what he's got. But I get his point, right? I think, in my opinion, and I could be wrong about this whole lesson, and you're like, Will, you're nuts. Just scrap this one from the internet. This was a bad lesson. But I'm going to tell you, I think there are at least three things that Jesus says in the book of Luke that he says this is how it is, but it's not how he wants it to be. I think there are three statements that he says in the book of Luke that he would love to be wrong about. That he's going to tell you kind of the bad news, but he's hoping that there might be a brave few of us in this room right now that would hear these three statements and say, you know what? I'm going to try to prove you wrong. Y'all got what I'm saying? Cool. All right. We're going to spend the most amount of time on this first one because I think this is maybe, I don't know, maybe the most needed. I don't know. All right. So Luke chapter 7. We got three passages we're going to look at. This is the one we're going to spend the most time on. So Luke 7, 36 through 50. So, now one of the Pharisees was requesting Jesus to dine with them, and he entered the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And there was a woman in that city who was a sinner. And when she learned that Jesus was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster vial of perfume, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and kept wiping them with the hair of her head and kissing his feet and anointing them with perfume. Now when the Pharisee who invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who and what sort of a person this woman is who is touching him, and that she is a sinner. That's the stage. That's the scenario. And then this is what Jesus says. And Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he replied, say it, teacher. Go ahead, buddy. And he says he's going to tell him a little story, a little illustration. A moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they were unable to repay, he graciously forgave them both. So which of them will love him more? Simon answered and said, I suppose the one who he forgave more. And he said to him, you judged correctly. Turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but she, since the time I came in, has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she anointed my feet with perfume. For this reason I say to you, her sins, which are many, have been forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little. That is the statement we're going to look at. I'm going to say it one more time. He who is forgiven little loves little. Then he said to her, your sins have been forgiven. Those who were reclining at the table with him began to say to themselves, who is this man who even forgives sins? And he said to the woman, your faith has saved you, go in peace. All right. Have you all ever noticed this sort of a trend that when God saves the worst of the worst people, they are the best of the best Christians? Y'all noticed that before? Like Paul, a pretty bad dude, right? Next to Jesus, or behind Jesus, probably the best evangelist there ever was. Has anybody ever grown up in the church? Have y'all ever grown up around God and around the Bible and around spiritual people, and maybe you haven't gone out there and committed the worst of all crimes, and you've kind of struggled with having the same passion for God that somebody who is really lived it up and been forgiven, they've got more passion. Have y'all ever seen that? I know you've seen it. You're not giving me enough affirmation here, but I know you've seen it. I don't care what y'all do. I know you've seen it. Bobby said this more than once. It's like some people, you don't know what it's like to be without God, right, Bobby? Have you said that before? More than once. It's like, man, when you don't have them, and then you do. And Josh has said this more than once too. Yeah, and like, how do we fix that? How do we fix it? If you've grown up in church, how do we get kids who have grown up around it to still fall in love with God, to see a need for Him? Do you all see that dilemma? You really need to see this because I'm going to talk about it for a few minutes. That's a problem, guys. That's a real problem. The truth that Jesus says is he who is forgiven little loves little. And the flip side of that is he who is forgiven a lot loves a lot. Now listen to this. Romans 5:20. You know part of the reason why God introduced the laws of Moses, why he gave people laws, was this. Now the law came in to increase the trespass. What's a trespass? The sin. Like ideally, if you were to give if you were to give people some rules and guidelines, it's going to help them live their life better, right? But really, you know what happens when you give people rules and guidelines? What do they start to figure out? Shoot, man, I am the more that you give me, the more I cannot do. Y'all see what I'm saying? So Paul says, part of why God gave the laws was to increase the trespass. But where sin increased, God's grace abounded all the more. Here's another one, Galatians 3:19 through 25. It's a whole section on this. But one of the big important phrases in there is, the law was added for the sake of transgression. We could have never had a law of Moses, and you could have got to Jesus, but the law of Moses was a great tutor or a guide. It was what did guides do? They show you the way. What did tutors do? They teach you. They get you from like, I'm dumb to I'm smart. Well, what is the law going to educate you on? It's not going to educate you on morality. It's going to educate you on transgression. It is going to show you that you need a savior, that you're sick. You need a physician. So that's why God gave the laws. And here's another one in John 21. Remember after Peter denied Jesus 3 times? And then he sees him again after his resurrection. And he says, feed my sheep. And listen, Peter was grieved because Jesus said to him the 3rd time. And why is that significant? Because Peter denied him 3 times, right? So the first time Jesus is like, feed my sheep. 2nd time, feed my sheep. But the third time, what happens to Peter? It's like, oh man, this is clicking. The 3rd time he said, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Okay? And here's the last one. Luke 15:29-31. The whole chapter, or most of the chapter, is the prodigal son. Y'all know the story, right? Guy has 2 kids. One of them says, I want my inheritance. He takes it, he goes off, and he just lives it up. And he just does all sorts of evil things. He blows all his money. And when he's down with the pigs, he's like, shoot, I would be treated better in my father's house as a slave. I'm going back home. Y'all understand? Y'all remember this? He goes back home. And the father welcomes him. He kills the fatted calf. They throw a party and all that sort of stuff. And do you remember what the older brother says when he comes back home? He's like, Lord, or not Lord, he's like, Father, look, these many years I have served you. I've been here the whole time. I've obeyed your commandments. I've done the right things. And you remember what he says? You never did what? You never threw a party. You never made that Boston butt and all the pulled pork. And you never did that. You never gave me the filet mignon. You never gave me all that fancy stuff, the lobster tail. You never did all that for me. And what does he say? What does the dad say? And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. Here's the point I want y'all to see. I know this is a long explanation for a one stinking statement in Luke 7, but it's going to be worth it. Here's what I want you to see. When the son who stayed home and he didn't go live an awful, terrible, wicked life, you know what the father said? Essentially, you don't have to go live a wicked life for me to throw you a party. Am I crazy, or do y'all agree? You stayed home. You were a good kid. You obeyed. I'm really proud of you. Like, that's great. But we still could have partied. We still could have had a fatted calf. You don't have to, guys, listen to this. And maybe I'm wrong, and I hope God will reveal it to me soon. All right. You don't have to go commit the worst of all sins to fall in love with God. The trend is, what does it take? Most of the time, you know what it takes, people? The bottom of the barrel. Man, I think God would absolutely love it if we didn't have to go deeper into debt to appreciate our forgiveness. It'd be great. It'd be great for our kids to grow up and just kind of have to make a few mistakes. Nobody wants to see your kids really go bad, right? Really go off the deep end. We don't want to see that. It'd be great if all of us could, like, okay, I know this statement is hard times make hard men and all that sort of stuff, but I'm going to listen to history. I'm going to listen to what Jesus says. Jesus says, he who is forgiven loves little. I know that's normal. I'm going to try to find a way to not have to sin more, to love more. Shall we continue in sin to receive more grace from God, that grace may abound? No, that's stupid. Why would you keep on sinning just to get more grace? Guys, this will be fantastic. If our church took it serious, that I don't have to go into more spiritual debt. I'm going to be appreciative that I was forgiven of this small amount, and I'm going to find a way to love God all the more. Maybe that requires me to look at other people's lives. Maybe that requires me to think about, where would I be if I kept going down this path? You know? But you don't have to go all the way down the terrible, wrong, evil path to love God. Okay, so there's the first one. These other ones are going to go quicker, okay? Here's the second one. Cindy brought this up in class, and she didn't even know, but she brought this up. It's a good one. All right, Luke chapter 13. Luke chapter 13, 22 through 30. He was passing through from one city and village to another, teaching and proceeding on his way to Jerusalem. And someone said to him, this is the big question. This is the big question. Lord, are there just a few who are being saved? That's the question. And Jesus said to them, strive to enter through the narrow door, for many, I tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able. Once the head of the house gets up and shuts the door, and you begin to stand outside and knock on the door, saying, Lord, open up to us. He will answer and say to you, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you're from. Then you will begin to say, we ate and drank in your presence, and you taught in our streets. He will say, I tell you, I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, all you evildoers. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, when you see Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, but you yourselves being thrown out. And they will come from east and west and from north and south and will recline at the table in the kingdom of God. And behold, some are last, will be first, and some are first, will be last. Okay. Y'all, I think I brought this up last week, but y'all know Doug Dynasty. Y'all know Phil, right? Like, it was really cool. I keep listening to all these little clips and short videos, but it's really cool. I believe it was his sister. Like, whenever he is just years into, like, running around on his wife, and he's a drunk and smoking pot and everything else. Like, he's not doing good. And I think Si was telling a story that everybody pretty much given up on him except for his sister. And his sister's like, y'all bunch of dummies. Why are y'all giving up on Phil? And she kind of made this, famous quote or prediction. If you can win Phil's heart over to God, he's going to win a lot of people's heart over to God. If you can get him saved, he will save many. He will bring many people to the Lord. Everybody thought, he's too bad. He's too far gone. You know what I'm saying? But what happened? This one guy in Louisiana, of all places, just living a terrible life. He's thrown a bunch of his future away. And he finally got one over to Christ. And do y'all know how many people that man reached? Like, I mean, it's insane. And I'm not saying like Phil Robertson is the standard, okay? He's got his own problems and everything else. But I am saying like there's There's a couple, like, I don't want to say stadiums, but big old auditoriums full of people coming to hear him preach, and videos with millions of views. I think if you were to tell Phil, did you know what Jesus said about how many people are going to heaven? You know what he's going to say? Yeah, it's not. I know what he said. How many guys? How big is the way that leads to heaven? How big is that path? Narrow. How big is the path that leads to hell? Broad. There are few that find the good path, many that find the bad path. In fact, in Luke's account, listen to this. In Luke's account, there's even people that are on the narrow path. There are people that are on the narrow path. They're going to go knock on the door, and what's God going to say? There's still a good number of you guys that I still don't even know. Like, some people are trying to go to heaven, some people aren't. There's a bunch of people that just don't care about heaven and hell. And there's some people, the small group, that do care about heaven, and even of that group, there's still a lot of them. They're going to get there, and they're going to be sorely surprised. But I feel like Phil Robertson was like, yeah, we're not going to do that. I feel like people like Phil are like, I know that's the normal standard. I know that's typical, but I'm going to try to make heaven crowded. Would anybody love to get to heaven and surprise God? Would anybody love to get to heaven and impress God? Would anybody love to get to heaven and God's having to pull out more seats than he thought? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Wouldn't it be fantastic? I don't know, but I think Jesus says that this is the norm because he's trying to provoke us. He's not trying to set the bar at not many people are going to make it. I think he's trying to provoke us, guys. And I hope that we're provoked. Now here's the last one. And last thing, this is important. Because this is we talked about this in Bible class too. This is a good little quote. Proximity does not equal association. Okay? What did they say? Let me make sure I'm reading it. I want to say it right one more time. They will begin to say, Jesus, we ate and drank in your presence. Do y'all hear that? Okay. And you taught in our streets. Did y'all hear that? You were around us, we were around you. Doesn't that mean we're entering in? Okay. Proximity does not equal association. We can be around God. That doesn't mean that we know God. So let's make that our priority. All right, and here's the last one. If I can get this thing to click. Come on. All right, hang on. All right. And here's the last one. One of the most odd stories that if you don't know Jesus and you don't know the Bible, you would just be like, Jesus is an immoral person. What a hypocrite. He'd be like, this is the craziest, dumbest story I've ever heard. But Jesus has a point to this. All right, Luke 16, 1 through 9. Now he was also saying to the disciples, here's the story for you. There's a rich man who had a manager. This manager was reported to him as squandering his possessions. And he came and said to him, what said I hear about you? Give an accounting of your management, for you can no longer be manager. The manager said to himself, oh, what shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I shall do, so that when I am removed from the management, people will welcome me into their homes. And he summoned each of his master's debtors, and he began saying to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And they said to him, here, take your bill, sit down, and quickly write 50. Then he said to another, how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. He said, here, take your bill, write down 80. And his master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly, which means wisely. Not like a good moral person, but he was creative. He was inventive. Is that the word? Is that the word I'm looking for? He's like, man, that is a clever plan that you came up with. Y'all hear before I read any more? The master is actually not upset. He's actually like, wow, that was pretty smart. This should haunt us. Jesus says, for the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light. I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, they will receive you into the eternal dwellings. Here's what I think should bother us. Let me give you one more example of this, okay? If you go back to Exodus 1, you remember, there are the 12 tribes of Israel, and they start to populate, and they start to grow, and there's like a large number of Israelites living in Egypt. And so the Pharaoh that gets in charge, he gets a little nervous because he's like, I don't know the exact number, but let's just say for every Egyptian, there's 6 Israelites. So what might you be worried about? If they ever decided that they wanted to take over the capital, you know what they could do? They could outman us. So in Exodus 1, the Pharaoh says, come, let us deal wisely or shrewdly with them. Or else they will multiply, and in the event of war, they will also join themselves to those who hate us and fight against us and depart from the land. Now, it's not a good thing what the Pharaoh did. He's going to make work hard on them. He's going to kill babies. But this is the term to be shrewd, because I don't know about you guys. I never use that word today. Okay? But the idea is the Pharaoh sees this problem, and he's like, we got to come up with a good plan, guys. Do y'all understand? Everybody understand? I promise I'll stop talking real soon if y'all just nod your heads. Y'all got it? Okay. Liam. He was like, yeah. Okay. So that's what it means to be shrewd. I was talking about bad people. And Luke, that's what it means to be shrewd, talking about bad people. And one more time, what does Jesus say? He says, hang on. Did I lose my page? Oh, he says in verse 8, the sons of this age. Let me put this in horse branch terms. The people of this world are more creative in devising evil plans than Christians are in devising godly plans. The world is more creative on how to make more money, on how to have more fun, and how to fulfill their desires, and how to push their agendas than the churches are at pushing God's agenda. How does that make you feel, guys? One more time. Like, imagine if your dad came up to you and he's like, our neighbor, their kids show me more respect than you guys do. How does that make you feel? Man, I tell you what, if I was wanting to get something done, I wouldn't call any of my kids. I'd call those kids. How would that make you all feel? So here's our option. Here's our 2 options. We either accept that that's the way it is, or we prove Jesus wrong. On these 3 phrases. It didn't work. Here's phrase number 1. Okay, phrase number 1 is, you got to go sin a bunch before you're going to appreciate your forgiveness. Tell you what, it'd be great is if we don't have to do that. Maybe some people, that's what you got to do. But I know that there was a son at home that was doing the right thing, and what did the father tell him? At any given point, we could have thrown a party for you. You don't have to go out there to have a party and to kill a fatted calf, okay? Here's the second one. I hope y'all are remembering this or writing it down. Here's the second one. How many are being saved? Just a few? And Jesus is like, yeah, just a few. Most people will pick the path that leads to destruction. A few pick the path that leads to eternal life. And even those people that pick that path, there's a lot of them that are going to get to the door to heaven one day. They're going to knock on it, and they're going to be like, we were around each other. Doesn't that mean that we're family? And he's going to be like, no. Because association is not determined by proximity. Association is determined by a relationship with God. And then the last one, I keep picking this thing up. The last one is that the world is more wise and can come up with a plan and can act shrewdly and is more creative than Christians are. God, that should bother us. Like, have y'all ever seen people, for instance, that like are so effective in the world, and then they get to church and they just kind of hold their hands up, like, I don't know how to do anything. It's like, really? You don't know how to do anything? Really? You're afraid to get up in front of people and that's what you do for a living? And you can't like do that at church? Really, you can confront every person in the world. You confront people all the time in the world about worldly things, but you're afraid to confront people about their soul? How about this? How about we change those three statements? How about when we get to heaven, it is crowded and packed. There's people there that loved God without having to just completely nail every nail they could find into Jesus's bones and skin on the cross. That we could do that, that we could figure it out really quick. We could figure out real fast without having to go deep. We could figure out real fast that we want to love God. And that we could come up with some plans to win people over to Jesus. And that we could be creative, and we could think outside the box, and we could use our little noggins to be a productive small group of people to make this small group of people a big group of people. So, the last quote, Luke 18:8. And these are Jesus' words. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? When Jesus comes back, what's he going to find? That's a good question. When Jesus comes back, what's he going to find? Let's try to be, I don't know how many, what is there, like 50 people in here right now? I don't know. It'd be awesome if nobody else in the world is doing it. At least this 50 group, this 50 people, at least this body, if we were to make up our minds that we are going to try to break the standard, and break the norm, and break the typical, and the things that normally are the case, we're going to try to surprise God. So, if you're here today and you're not a Christian, are you going to be a part of the majority, or would you like to start enjoying the best life that there is? We would love to introduce you to Jesus. And if you're here today and you are a Christian, this is not really meant to make you feel too bad, but it is meant to make you feel a little bit bad, guys. I hope you feel just a little bad, in a good way. I hope you feel a little provoked. I hope you're a little prompted to be something more than you were before you walked into this room today. You just feel that way, or did I fail? Anybody feel just slightly, just the least little bit prompted to like, let's break the normal? Wouldn't that be great? Mike gave me the thumbs up. It's like, wrap it up. No, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great, Mike? Wouldn't that be great if heaven was crowded? Not because we are good people, but because we got the message to people? That'd be so good. It would be so good. It'd be such a blessing if I got my kids to bow the knee to Jesus without having to make like lifelong consequential decisions. You know? Like I would love for them to just sin very little and be totally in love with God. That'd be so great. And I'd love it if our church was not afraid to get creative. I would love it if our church was not afraid to be courageous. I would love it if our church, if you all took the skills that you use at school and that you use at your work and that you use in the world on a day-to-day basis, if you were to harness that energy and use it at church, what could this church get done for God? If you have any need, why don't you come forward? Together we stand and